So, what I want to talk about today was something I thought very pertinent to yourself, and that is the thyroid.
Right.
Couple of aspects to it. Number one is if you can just tell us what a thyroid does, and
Yeah.
number two, what well what would affect it to either make it not work or have what you had, for example.
Okay. All right.
Besides genetics.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, the thyroid sits in the neck. So in this little bit here, I don't know if you can feel yours, but it's it's kind of a butterfly shape. So kind of where your collarbone is, if you kind of then go up, it's kind of in there. If it's normal, you probably kind of can feel it's there, but it's kind of butterfly shaped.
Yeah.
And when I'm explaining to people what it does, I kind of liken it to the boiler in your central heating system. Okay, because it generates the heat in your body and the energy in your body through a hormone called thyroxine. But it all actually starts in the pituitary. So pituitary kind of in the top of your brain, and that I liken to the thermostat in your central heating system, and the rest of your body is all the radiators in the house. So that's the best way to kind of the best analogy I can come up with people. So what happens is the pituitary will sense that you're cold, that you need more energy, and it will send a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone to your thyroid, to your boiler, in the same way that your thermostat in the hall will send a message to the boiler to say generate heat. So the thyroid then creates a hormone called thyroxine, so T4. So it's 1 part tyrosine, 4 parts iodine, hence why it's T and 4. However, that form of hormone is inactive. Okay, we can't actually use that yet. So it has to be sent around your body, transported around your body, and converted into something called T3. So what we've done is we've lost one iodine molecule to make it now T3 rather than T4. And it's T3 that ends up in all your cells and creates energy. But it has to be converted in your liver, and it has to be converted in your gut, and then transported into the cells. So when I see people with an underactive thyroid, or they've got the symptoms, maybe that's probably the best place to go, isn't it? The symptoms can be very widespread. So let's talk about underactive first. So they might have hair loss. The outer half of the eyebrow might disappear. The hairs on the lower part of your leg might disappear, so below the knee. You might have cold hands and cold feet, and actually some people even like a cold nose, like a dog.
Yeah.
It's almost like the radiators that are a long way away from the central system are not getting energy, so those parts don't get anything. And the other symptoms might be insomnia, depression, constipation. For women, heavy periods. For some women, miscarriages, feeling clumsy, foggy brain. You might bruise easily because you're actually a little bit imbalanced. Your ability to not be clumsy goes down, so you knock into things. And so I look back and think, gosh, yeah, I'd always have bruises on my legs and think, where on earth did I get those from? But because I was knocking into stuff, because I wasn't steady in my gait. So those are some of the symptoms that people might have. And what can happen is that sometimes people will be misdiagnosed with something. So they might be diagnosed with depression, for example, when actually they've got an underactive thyroid. And the reason for that is that when you go to the doctor, they only test the thermostat. So they test TSH, and if your thermostat's working okay, they say you're fine. So this is where the analogy works really well. It's a bit like, having a freezing cold radiator up in the bedroom, but the radiator next to the thermostat is piping hot. So your thermostat thinks the whole system's fine, but actually upstairs it's really cold. And that's kind of when people go to the doctor and they're told your TSH is normal, and they're like, but I've got cold hands and feet, and I can't lose weight, and I feel low, and all these other things, because from a budget point of view, if the TSH is correct, they won't spend the money on looking at T4 and T3.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so
Jesus.
Yeah, and because the range of the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, is really broad, so between 0.27 and 4.2, if you're 4, your doctor might say, oh, you're fine, but actually your thermostat's struggling. You know, it's calling to the boiler all the time. Whereas if it was at 1, it's not calling much at all. You know, but below 2 is kind of where you want people to be. But a doctor won't do anything until it's kind of 5 or 6. Yeah, and equally the other end where it's too low, which is when you get overactive. So so an overactive thyroid is the opposite. You know, you might get heart palpitations, you might be very anxious, you might be very hot, and actually it can be quite dangerous for your heart. You can have like a storm to the heart, where your heart rate might hit 200. You know, it can be really dangerous, the overactive.
That is. Yeah, and is there like a particular age that this would hit at or anything, or is there a common age where this occurs?
So for a lot of women, it's triggered by pregnancy and childbirth.
Okay.
So those changes in hormone levels, because obviously all the hormones work together, those changes in hormones can often trigger then the thyroid to kind of get unstable, because it does have a relationship with estrogen particularly. So and again, so some women's thyroids might go a bit weird postmenopausally, when again the hormones change. But I think there's a lot of people walking around with an underactive thyroid particularly that have not been diagnosed.
Okay. Because go on.
Yeah, no, because it is hereditary. It is hereditary. It does run in families. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's got it. But when I meet people, I'm kind of like, so has your mum got an underactive thyroid? No, but my aunt has, and actually my grandmother did, or my dad did, or there's and sometimes it's a mix. So even in the same family, you might get overactive and underactive. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be the same one.
Yeah.
And again, there's different reasons. So, for example, autoimmunity, where you're attacking your own body. The overactive is called Graves' disease, and it's like 99% of the time it is an overactive. It is autoimmune. You can get some of nodules on the thyroid that can make it go over, and that's not Graves. But in the main, it is autoimmune. Whereas the underactive, it could be autoimmune. It could just be that it's just not optimal. It's just not working as well as it ought to. But interesting, you kind of touched on it. I had thyroid cancer 2016, and every time I had a blood test done, all of my stuff, so my TSH, my T4, my T3, all of them were normal, and my antibodies were normal as well. So actually, there wasn't ever anything wrong with my thyroid. I just happened, and I don't know why, to grow a cancer in the thyroid gland. And I'm not sure therefore, I don't think that's hereditary in the same way. So who knows why my body decided to do that? I guess we'll never know.
I think because the thing that stuck with me that you say is about the people getting to a heart rate of like 200, because rule of thumb is your heart rate, your max heart rate is 220 minus your age. So, I mean, it's like if I got that now, I'd have a heart attack.
Exactly,
and that's me.
Saying. Exactly that. Yeah. And so,
so my heart rate is 185.
Yeah.
Well, no, 195. Sorry.
Okay.
So that'd be my max, and so that'd be pushing my heart beyond its capacity. So God knows what it'd be like if the prevalent age is beyond however old I am.
Yeah. So, and of course, because it creates like you're kind of like having a panic attack at the same time. So anxiety's high, and because obviously it's not something you can just breathe through and bring down.
Yeah, because you can't. Would you say would that be autonomic?
I don't know, maybe. Well, it's the pituitary that's kind of so. It's,
okay.
So what's happening in the pituitary in that instance is you've got TSH receptors in the pituitary that are meant to be receiving the signals to say thyroid's working okay.
Yeah.
And they get attacked, and so it doesn't switch off. So it's like the thermostat's calling the whole time, heat. Doesn't get the feedback loop to say stop.
Yeah.
because the
Wow.
receptors are working. So in that instance, they have a couple of choices. So they'll give they'll try with a medication called carbimazole with a lot of
Yep.
people, and
Yep.
in 9 times out of 10 that will do the job in kind of a year to 18 months. And also when I work with people, I'll put them on a paleo diet, so I'll take all the gluten and the dairy out, just to kind of calm the immune system down if if the antibodies are really high. And then and going back to the kind of the T4 and TSH stuff, top end of T4 is meant to be about 20, 22, but it could be as high as 100 with someone who's overactive, which is why it's really pumping
Wow.
out. Yeah. So carbimazole kind of calms everything down. A paleo diet is the next thing. And then if those two don't work, they've got two other choices, which is to remove the thyroid in the same way they would do with cancer, or cut a bit off. They might like take half out and hope that's less tissue to produce hormone, or they might do the radioactive iodine, where you swallow a radioactive pill, and basically anywhere in your body that's got thyroglobulin and T4 hormone in it will be killed. And then you have to carry a certificate, because you will set off alarms in airports because you're radioactive.
Oh, bloody hell. Is that a case for you then?
No, well, I was lucky. I didn't have to have that. I was very grateful I didn't have to have because you have to go into a lead-lined room in hospital for 3 or 4 days. They come in, with all the gear on and kind of give you the pill in a...
bloody hell.
Yeah, and then you have to stay there, and then you can't, if you've got young children, you can't see them for 2 weeks afterwards.
Wow.
Because you could affect their ovaries and their glands. So, but yeah, as I say, you potentially are setting off alarms in airports. So I believe you have like a little certificate just to say I've had radioactive iodine.
Yeah.
But it also affects people's saliva glands. So because there's quite a lot of thyroid hormone in those, so people they kind of suck sweets the whole time they are waiting for it to dissipate, so they don't lose their saliva glands.
Oh wow.
As part of because it can destroy them. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I think so people are quite motivated to do everything they can before then, really. But when it comes to thyroid cancer, some people, you don't have a choice necessarily. If they feel you need to have that radioactive iodine, that potentially saves your life. So I think it's always case by case. People have just got to get informed and decide. So with my oncologist, because I only had the lump in one side and the second side they removed was clear, and therefore it hadn't spread even in the gland, their view was it wouldn't have spread anywhere else in my body either, and so there was no need to do anything else. Whereas other people, if they've got it in the gland and in lymph nodes, so they're having to remove lymph nodes and all sorts of stuff, then obviously they're worrying about it going other places. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So yes, obviously since having that, I've done a lot more work with thyroid because I needed to get myself well, as much as anything else. But it's kind of complicated, but it's not. If you kind of put it in this kind of central heating idea, you can understand the body's feedback loops and where things might get broken. So if I see someone that's got IBS and they've got an underactive thyroid, then it's possible they're not converting very well from T4 to T3 in the gut. Equally, if they've got any liver problems, like a fatty liver or something like that, again, their conversions might not be great. So sometimes it's not the pituitary or the gland, it's further down the system that you're looking to help them improve. So I think I wouldn't want anyone to run off to the doctor and think they've got to get thyroxine, because there's so many things you can do with your body before you get to that point, Otherwise,
that's reassuring to hear that we can get there before we get to stage like yourself.